In the town of Umuahia, the name Prophet Chibuzo carried both fear and reverence. His church, Mountain of Divine Revelation, stood on a hill like a palace of miracles. Every Sunday, buses from neighboring towns arrived loaded with men and women desperate for deliverance. Some came crawling, others clutching photos of sick relatives. Inside, the prophet's deep voice thundered through the speakers. "I see your destiny. I see your enemy. God has spoken." And the people wept, falling under the anointing. He was a man of charm and mystery, tall, dark-skinned, always in white robes that shimmered under the lights. Rumor had it he could call out a stranger's name, tell their village, even describe what they ate for breakfast. But behind those revelations was something few dared to question, until Mama Ezinne, a stubborn widow in her late 50s with fire in her eyes, stepped forward. Hey, before I continue this story, take a second to like this video, subscribe if you love African stories, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from: Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, or beyond. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Mama Ezinne claimed Prophet Chibuzo had prophesied that her late husband's land must be sown as a seed to the church. She refused. Since that day, strange things began happening. Her crops withered, her roof leaked despite no rain, and church members whispered that she had offended God's anointed. But Ezinne wasn't afraid. If he is truly a man of God, then God himself would defend the truth. Sunday morning came with heavy clouds, but the churchyard was alive with song and drums. The ushers, dressed in white and gold, moved like soldiers, organizing the thousands who came to see Papa. When Mama Ezinne walked in, murmurs followed her like a curse. "That's the woman who challenged the prophet. She will see Pepe today, oh." Her wrapper was old, her slippers dusty, but her eyes burned with courage. She walked straight to the front, ignoring the ushers who tried to stop her. Prophet Chibuzo looked up from the altar, his calm expression hardening. "Mama Ezinne, you again," he said softly into the microphone. "I want my land back," she said, her voice steady. "You said God told me to give it, but God told me nothing." The crowd gasped. The prophet smiled, slow and dangerous. "You dare question the voice of God?" he asked. The air grew tense. Then in a dramatic gesture, he raised his hand, and Ezinne staggered backward, as if pushed by an unseen force. People screamed, "Power! Power of God!" But one man in the crowd, a young sound technician named Obina, saw something odd. The prophet's assistant touching a small device hidden near the altar. Something didn't feel right. After service, Obina couldn't shake what he had seen. He worked in the church's media department, setting up microphones and speakers every weekend. But lately, he'd been noticing strange cables running under the altar, tiny earpieces hidden in ushers' collars, and miraculous revelations that always came right after setting whispers over the headset. He met Mama Ezinne near the market that evening. "Mama," he whispered, "what if the prophet is hearing things that no spirit should tell him?" She looked at him sharply. "Speak plain, my son." Obina hesitated. "There are microphones, secret ones. I think he listens to people's private confessions before service."
Ezinne's eyes widened, but her voice remained calm. "Then we must prove it, not for me, for everyone who kneels before lies." That night, they planned something dangerous: expose the prophet on live service. Meanwhile, Chibuzo sat in his mansion-like office, staring into a mirror. "She will not stop," he said softly. His reflection smiled back at him, but the smile didn't move with his face. Ezinne joined the women's fellowship under the pretense of seeking forgiveness. Through Obina, she learned that the prophet's inner circle met every Saturday night in the church hall. They spoke in hushed tones, planning who would manifest healing and which families would sow their blessings. Everything was scripted, from fainting spells to fake prophecies. Obina sneaked into the sound room with his small phone camera, capturing everything. One of the assistants, a man with tribal marks, noticed movement and shouted, "Who's there?" Obina barely escaped through the side door. At dawn, Ezinne prayed under the old almond tree behind her house. "If I perish, I perish," she said, but deep down she felt a strange calm, as though something beyond her strength walked beside her. The next Sunday, the church was packed beyond measure. Buses lined the streets. Vendors sold anointing oil and holy handkerchiefs. Cameras were rolling. It was live broadcast day. Prophet Chibuzo announced, "Today, God will expose the enemies of his work." The congregation roared. Ezinne and Obina exchanged glances. Their hidden camera was ready. When the prophet began calling out names, Ezinne stepped forward once more. "Call my name, prophet," she challenged. The crowd gasped again. Chibuzo smiled and touched his earpiece, but nothing came through. Obina had cut the signal. The prophet stuttered. "The spirit is moving." Static crackled. Then Obina's voice echoed through the church speakers. "There is no spirit here, only microphones and lies." Panic erupted. Ushers ran, people screamed, and for the first time, Prophet Chibuzo's mask began to crack. The church erupted into chaos. Women screamed, men pushed to the exits. Ushers tried to silence the speakers. Prophet Chibuzo shouted, "Silence! This is the devil's work!" But his voice trembled. Ezinne stood firm before the altar, holding her ground like a warrior. "You lied in the name of God," she shouted. "You used fear to steal from the poor." Obina's footage played on the giant LED screen, the secret meetings, the fake prophecies, the coded earpieces. Gasps filled the air. People began tearing off their church badges, some falling on their knees crying, "We have been deceived." The prophet's guards rushed forward to seize Ezinne, but the storm outside broke violently. Thunder cracked like a divine gavel. The lights flickered, and suddenly all the microphones began to hiss with static. Through that noise, a strange whisper echoed, not from Obina's device, not from any speaker. It said, "My house has become a den of thieves." Even Prophet Chibuzo froze. His eyes darted around the hall. He said, "Who said that?" But no one spoke.
That night, Obina went into hiding. Word had spread fast across Umuahia. The mighty prophet had fallen. But those who had worked for him were furious. 2 men followed Obina to his uncle's compound, whispering threats. Meanwhile, Mama Ezinne received a strange visitor, a frail old woman with cloudy eyes. "You have opened the gate," the woman said. "When you drag light into a house built on lies, the darkness does not live quietly." Ezinne frowned. "What do you mean?" "The prophet was not alone," the woman murmured. "Something ancient feeds on his deceit. And now that you've broken the altar, it will hunger for something new." Before Ezinne could reply, lightning flashed and the woman was gone. Only the scent of burnt oil lingered. Chibuzo's mansion was silent except for the ticking of a wall clock. His loyal assistant, Brother Caleb, stood by the window. "Papa, what will we do? People are saying police will come." Chibuzo's eyes were hollow. "Let them come. The power that raised me is not of man." He turned to the mirror again, that same mirror he had used to speak with the spirit. But tonight, the reflection didn't obey him. It smiled first, then it whispered, "You failed me." Chibuzo stumbled back, shouting prayers, but his own voice sounded strange, distant. The reflection began to move on its own, stepping out of the mirror like a shadow clothed in smoke. "You gave me worship, now you owe me souls." Outside, the screen tore through the quiet streets of Umuahia. At dawn, the police sealed the church. Investigators from Aba arrived with Obina's footage as evidence. But when they opened the sanctuary doors, a foul stench of burnt oil filled the air. The microphones were melted. The altar cracked down the middle. Ezinne walked in with her Bible clutched tightly. The inspector warned, "Madam, this is a crime scene." She shook her head. "This is no crime scene, sir. It is judgment ground." As she stepped near the altar, she saw it, a small hole beneath the stage leading into a dark tunnel. Inside were the remnants of charms, blood-stained calabashes, and strange carvings. The police recoiled in disgust. Prophet Chibuzo was not just a fraud, he was bound to something worse, Ezinne whispered. That evening, a prayer vigil was held outside the church gates. Hundreds gathered, singing old hymns, begging God to cleanse the land. Mama Ezinne led them with tears in her eyes, her voice trembling yet strong. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. In the distance, flames appeared. The church had caught fire, not from torches or petrol, but from within. Witnesses swore they saw a dark figure walk through the blaze, smiling as the roof collapsed.
Obina filmed it all. Later, when he replayed the footage, he noticed something chilling. A faint reflection of Chibuzo in the fire, staring back through the lens, whispering, "It is not over, Mama Ezinne. You only expose the man, not the power." Ezinne, watching beside him, crossed herself and whispered, "Then we'll finish what we started." Mama Ezinne becomes both detective and spiritual warrior, while the spirit behind Prophet Chibuzo begins to haunt her dreams. After the fire, Umuahia slept uneasily. Cows refused to graze near the church ruins. Children woke screaming from nightmares. Mama Ezinne too began to dream of mirrors dripping oil, of voices chanting from underground. Every night she woke soaked in sweat. One night she saw Prophet Chibuzo in her dream, kneeling before a shadow. "Forgive me, Master," he wept. "The woman has exposed me." The shadow replied, "Then unmake her." Ezinne jolted awake. Her Bible lay open beside her bed. At the verse, "When the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him." She whispered a prayer, but outside her window, a dark figure stood watching and vanished as soon as she called Jesus' name. 2 weeks later, an investigator from Enugu, Inspector Chika Okuru, arrived in the village. He was tall, quiet, and skeptical of anything spiritual. "Madam, I believe in evidence, not demons," he told Ezinne. Ezinne smiled sadly. "Then you'll find both." Together, they examined the underground tunnel. Chika found hidden wires, old cameras, and a journal with coded names. He said, "This is your prophet's ledger." But one page was burnt. The last entry read, "Debt unpaid. 3 souls remaining." That night, as Chika left, his car engine refused to start. The radio came alive on its own, playing a preacher's voice. "Touch not my anointed." The same phrase Prophet Chibuzo always shouted before miracles. Chika looked back towards the church ruins. A single candle burned there, though no one had entered. A heavy storm battered Umuahia. Mama Ezinne ran to secure her yam barn when she saw a woman standing barefoot in the rain, staring towards the ruined church. Her whopper clung to her body, her eyes blank. "Who are you?" Ezinne asked. The woman turned slowly. "He promised me healing. Instead, he took my child." Then she began to hum, a lullaby that froze Ezinne's blood. It was Naomi's song, the same one from the Fire of Glory story that had once gone viral on the radio. Ezinne tried to hold her, but the woman dissolved into mist, leaving behind a single waist bead glinting in the mud. Ezinne picked it up carefully. The bead was warm, pulsing like a heartbeat.
Inspector Chika traced the mirror Prophet Chibuzo used to a craftsman in Nsukka. The man trembled when shown a photo. "I was paid to carve that mirror from the wood of an ogbanje tree," he confessed. "It was meant to be a portal for power, not reflection." When they returned to Umuahia, they found the mirror buried under the church rubble, perfectly unbroken. Ezinne dared to touch it and saw flashes, villagers kneeling, money raining, Chibuzo laughing as shadows whispered around him. She screamed and dropped it. The mirror cracked and smoke poured out. Within it, a faint voice whispered, "Break me completely, or I'll find another prophet." Chika looked at Ezinne. "We need to destroy this thing before someone else does." Word spread that the prophet's spirit haunted the ruins. Ezinne gathered faithful villagers and called for an all-night prayer. "We will not let darkness reclaim this land." Drums and candles filled the square as thunder rolled. Midway through the prayers, the wind rose violently. The cracked mirror began to glow, and the smoke thickened into a face, Chibuzo's. "You think you've won?" it hissed. "Faith is fear, and I am his God." But Ezinne lifted her Bible high and shouted, "The God of truth reigns." The mirror shattered in a flash of light. The people fell to the ground, crying. When dawn came, the air was calm again, but in the ashes where the mirror lay, Chika found a strange mark burned into the soil, the outline of a man kneeling. After the destruction of the mirror, Inspector Chika and Mama Ezinne began piecing together the coded journal. Each symbol represented a pastor, branches connected to Prophet Chibuzo. They realized the Umuahia was only the root of something far larger. Some of the names were familiar, prophets in Lagos, Port Harcourt, even Accra, all claiming fire ministries or mantle of Chibuzo. Ezinne frowned. "So, it wasn't about land," she murmured. "It was about a kingdom." Chika nodded grimly. "A kingdom of deceit." That night, their phones buzzed with anonymous texts. "Stop digging or you'll join him." Ezinne deleted the message, whispering, "Truth doesn't die by threats." But outside her window, the waste beach she had found began to glow again. Faint, steady, alive. Chika and Ezinne drove to Aba to confront one of the connected pastors, Prophet Kenechukwu. His ministry hall was crowded. Banners reading "Double Fire Night" tapped the mantle of Chibuzo. Ezinne and Chika watched from the back as Prophet Kenechukwu mimicked Chibuzo's style, word for word. But when Ezinne shouted, "False prophet, you steal in the name of God," the crowd erupted. Men rushed forward to silence her. Chika pulled his badge, warning them off. Amid the chaos, Kenechukwu sneered, "You think you can kill the fire? Chibuzo is not dead, he was chosen." Suddenly, the lights flickered. The sound system hissed and a distorted voice filled the speakers. "Who unburies the buried?"
The crowd screamed. Ezinne turned to see a shadow stretch across the wall, taking Chibuzo's ship. Chika later analyzed the sound recording. It wasn't feedback. The voice was real, low frequency, not human. He brought the evidence to his superior in Enugu, but the man refused to act. "These prophets have power, Chika. Political power. Drop it." Ezinne shook her head. "They build temples of fear and call them churches. If we stop now, more souls will be lost." That night, Ezinne dreamt again. She stood in a vast church made of mirrors, each showing a different prophet preaching the same lies. In the center stood Chibuzo's reflection, smiling. "You didn't free them, woman. You multiplied me." She woke up screaming. Outside, the cock crowed, but its cry sounded strangely like laughter. Rumors of Ezinne's visions spread fast. Some villagers called her the woman of truth. Others feared she was possessed by guilt. But her courage inspired others. A mass gathering formed. Pastors, elders, and common folk came to Umuahia for a truth revival. Ezinne spoke before the crowd, her voice trembling but fierce. "The true altar of God is not built on fear. It is built on justice, mercy, and truth." Thunder rolled. The air grew heavy. Suddenly, one of the young prophets collapsed, screaming, "He is here, the one you defied." The sky darkened unnaturally, and the voice of Chibuzo echoed through the wind. "Truth cannot burn fire.
Fire burns truth. Candles blew out. Only Ezinne's remained lit. As lightning struck the old ruins of Fire of Glory Church, people scattered in terror. Ezinne fell to her knees, clutching her Bible. "Lord, if truth must burn, let it burn me first," she cried. Inspector Chika ran to her, shielding her from debris. In that instant, a blinding light shot through the clouds, forming a cross above the ruins. The shadow writhed and screamed, then melted into the earth like smoke sucked downwards. When silence returned, only the scent of jasmine lingered, the same fragrance from Naomi's final deliverance in Port Harcourt. Ezinne wept. "The curse is not gone," she said. "It just changed its name." By morning, word spread like wildfire. The Fire of Glory ruins in Umuahia had burned with no fire. No one could explain the strange marks scorched into the ground, crosses turned upside down, and ashes that smelled like jasmine. Inspector Chika guarded the scene, warning off curious villagers. "Until we know what caused it, nobody steps inside," he barked. Mama Ezinne, sitting under a mango tree nearby, whispered, "God has spoken." But in her heart, she wasn't sure which God had answered. Later that day, television crews arrived. Reporters fought for interviews. "Did Prophet Chibuzo truly rise from the dead?" one shouted. Ezinne simply replied, "He never rose, he only fell deeper." That night, the ashes began to move, forming faint handprints that led into the bush. Something wasn't finished.
Inspector Chika received a flash drive delivered anonymously. The sender's note read, "From the inside before the final fire." He and Ezinne watched in horror. The footage showed Chibuzo and 2 other prophets burying jars of dark liquid beneath the altar. A camera hidden in the rafters caught everything, including Chibuzo saying, "Every soul that kneels here belongs to me." Ezinne gasped. This was never about faith. It was a covenant. Chika leaned forward. "If we release this, every fake prophet in Nigeria will shake." But as they watched further, a figure appeared behind the cameraman, Naomi's ghost-like outline, whispering, "The truth burns both the guilty and the bearer." Then the footage cut to static. A week later, Ezinne was summoned by the National Prophetic Council in Abuja, a gathering of the country's most influential pastors and miracle workers. Their leader, Apostle Gideon, smiled coldly. "Sister Ezinne, you've stirred the waters of God's servants. You must stop before this becomes spiritual war." Ezinne looked around. If God is in your war, then truth should not be your enemy. Laughter rippled through the hall. One man hissed, "You speak like Jezebel." But as they mocked, a gust of wind swept through the room. The chandelier above them flickered, and the voice of Chibuzo echoed faintly from nowhere. "You cannot silence what was never dead." The pastors froze. For the first time, fear entered the council of men who claimed divine power. Ezinne and Chika gave the footage to Amaka Ojo, now a celebrated journalist after her Fire of Glory expose. Together, they prepared a national broadcast titled "The Shadows Behind the Cross." The documentary aired on a Sunday night. Millions watched as the footage revealed the dark underbelly of anointed men. Hidden microphones, fake healings, secret bank transfers, all tied to Prophet Chibuzo's empire. Outrage swept the nation. Hashtags like "false fire" and #expose the prophets trended across Africa. Churches split overnight. Some pastors fled, others confessed publicly. But Ezinne received a final warning text. "Truth is expensive, Mama. Are you ready to pay with your soul?" That night, her radio turned on by itself, playing Prophet Chibuzo's last sermon. "Touch not mine anointed, or be touched by what anointed them." Rain poured endlessly in Umuahia. Thunder groaned like an old god waking. Ezinne couldn't sleep. She kept hearing a faint sound, whispers under the floorboards of her late husband's house. She lit a candle and knelt to listen. The whisper formed words. "You broke the altar, but not the seed." Her eyes widened. Beneath the floor, a small clay pot pulsed faintly, identical to the ones buried under Chibuzo's altar. She gasped. "He hid one here before he died." Suddenly, the candle went out. In the darkness, she heard footsteps and a familiar voice. "You took my land, Ezinne. Now I take yours." Her late husband's voice, but deeper, older, and wrong. She screamed as the wind shattered her windows and the flame reignited by itself, showing the shadow of Chibuzo standing behind her.
Mama Ezinne's candle flickered weakly as she stared at the clay pot buried under the floor. Her trembling fingers dug through the dirt until she uncovered it, an old pot sealed with palm leaves and marked with strange red symbols. She whispered, "God of mercy, what is this?" A voice seemed to answer from the walls, "The price your husband paid for healing." Ezinne froze. Her mind flashed back to years ago when her husband had fallen mysteriously ill and Prophet Chibuzo had prayed for him. He recovered, she remembered, but after that he changed, distant, angry. She realized too late that her husband had made a secret deal with Chibuzo, giving him ownership of their land in exchange for life. The pot in her hands trembled. Black smoke leaked through the cracks. "Your husband lives in debt, and now the debt is due," a whisper said. Ezinne screamed, smashing the pot against the wall. But instead of breaking, it burst into flame, burning with blue fire. Inspector Chika arrived minutes later, gun drawn. "Mama Ezinne," I heard shouting. He froze. The room was filled with the smell of burning palm oil, but no fire in sight. Only the remnants of the clay pot, and Ezinne kneeling beside it, whispering prayers. I found another altar. Chibuzo tied my husband's soul to his covenant. Chika sighed. "Then this goes deeper than the church. It's generational." He bagged the pot fragments carefully. "We'll send this for analysis." But as he stepped outside, a gust of wind blew open his car door, and the radio crackled to life. Chibuzo's voice came through, distorted and slow. "Inspector, you carry what you do not understand." The car engine started by itself. Headlights flashed 3 times like blinking eyes. Chika muttered, "I don't get paid enough for demons." That night, Ezinne dreamt of walking through the church again, but it was flooded with water, like the swamp of forgotten souls. She saw faces of those who had fallen under the anointing. They were drowning, reaching for her. From the pulpit, Prophet Chibuzo smiled. "You wanted truth. Here it is. They prayed for miracles but became my offering." Ezinne cried, "Why me? Why my family?" Chibuzo's form began to melt, revealing a creature made of ash and bone. "Because you believed a lie, and every lie must have a believer to survive." She woke up screaming, her bedsheet soaked in sweat. Outside her window, fireflies flickered, forming the shape of a cross before fading away. She whispered, "God, if this is your battle, then give me strength to fight it." Days later, journalist Amaka Ojo arrived from Lagos after hearing of the haunting in Umuahia. She said, "I told myself I was done with stories like this, but truth has a way of calling us back." She filmed Ezinne's testimony, the clay pot, the dream, and Chika's strange radio messages. If this story airs, every pastor in this country will hide their face. But that night, as she reviewed her footage, her computer glitched. In one frame, Chibuzo's reflection appeared behind her, whispering, "The altar still breathes."
Her camera shut off automatically. When she turned it back on, a single sentence appeared on the screen. You cannot document what belongs to the dark. The following Sunday, strange phenomena struck Umuahia. Statues wept oil, church bells rang on their own, and shadows moved even under bright sunlight. People whispered, "The prophet's spirit walks again." Crowds began gathering near the ruins of Chibuzo's church, praying, crying, begging for forgiveness. Others shouted, "Mama Ezinne brought a curse." As Ezinne arrived, the ground beneath the ruins trembled. Smoke rose, not from fire, but from the soil itself. From within, a low moan echoed, like something waking beneath the earth. Chika shouted, "Everyone, get back!" But Ezinne stepped forward, gripping her Bible. "No, this time I won't run. I will face what I started." The earth split open, and a faint glowing figure began to emerge. From the cracked ground, something monstrous rose, not quite flesh, not quite shadow. It looked like Prophet Chibuzo, but his eyes were hollow flames, and his voice echoed with 1,000 whispers. "Did you think truth buries power?" the creature hissed. "No, Mama Ezinne, truth feeds it." People screamed and scattered. Even Inspector Chika stumbled back, clutching his gun, though it was useless. Ezinne stood her ground, trembling but defiant. "You built your altar on lies, Chibuzo, but today you will face a god you mocked." Chibuzo's specter stretched out his hand. A storm of ash swirled around her. But Ezinne dropped to her knees and began to pray in Igbo, tears rolling down her face. Her voice cut through the roar. "Let every hidden thing be revealed. Let every tongue that deceived the poor be silenced." Suddenly, the ground shuddered. The hidden microphones buried in the church ruins began to spark and burst into flame, one after the other. The altar itself cracked open, revealing rows of human skulls, each marked with red paint. The crowd gasped. A collective cry of horror swept through Umuahia. The skulls began to wail, not in sound, but in the air, like trapped souls crying for release. Inspector Chika fell to his knees. Holy God! Mama Ezinne's hands shook, but she raised her Bible higher. They were his victims, the ones he promised miracles to. He buried them here to seal his power. Lightning flashed across the sky, striking the church's rusted bell. The bell rang, boom, and the wailing stopped. Then silence, then whispers. "Forgive us," the air seemed to say. "Set us free." Ezinne whispered, "You are free now," and pressed her hand to the soil. The ground glowed faintly, gold light seeping through the cracks, as though grace itself was burning through corruption. But in the same moment, Chibuzo's shadow began to reform, crawling towards her. "You freed them," he hissed, "but who will free you?" Rain began to fall, washing away the ash and soot. People returned cautiously, forming a wide circle around the prophet's ghost and Mama Ezinne. Amaka's camera flickered to life again, recording everything, the lightning, the tears, the trembling. "People of Umuahia," Ezinne cried, "you were deceived by signs, not by truth. You followed the man, not the message."
Her voice broke, but power surged in her words. "I may die today, but let the truth live." The prophet's spirit lunged at her, screaming. The air split like thunder. Then Ezinne shouted a single name, "Jesus." A burst of white light erupted, blinding everyone. When the light faded, Ezinne was lying on the ground, motionless, but Chibuzo's shadow was gone, scorched into the earth like ash. They buried Mama Ezinne behind the ruins of the church, the same place she had unearthed the truth. The villagers wept openly. Even Inspector Chika, who never cried, stood silently, rain dripping from his cap. Amaka's video of the event went viral. Millions watched, shocked. The prophet who built his altar on bones. Churches were forced to answer questions. Government investigated fake miracles. But in Umuahia, something strange began happening. At night, a soft flame would appear over his Ezinne's grave, not burning, just glowing. Some said it was a warning.
Others said it was her spirit still watching. And whenever someone lied in church, the flame flickered violently. Months later, a young man rebuilt the ruins, calling it New Fire Revival Center. He claimed to be reformed, a man of purity. People returned, desperate for miracles. But one night, as he knelt to pray at the new altar, he felt heat beneath his knees. The ground vibrated. He lifted the cloth and saw something glowing faintly under the soil, Ezinne's flame. A whisper drifted through the darkness. Truth was never buried here, only men who thought they could bury it. The man screamed and fled the church. By dawn, the new altar had collapsed, consumed by fire. And somewhere in the wind, Mama Ezinne's voice whispered, "Let no one turn God's house into a market again." For weeks after the fire, Umuahia didn't sleep. Every night, strange lights danced near the ruins. Some said it was Ezinne's spirit guarding the truth. Others whispered that Chibuzo's shadow still roamed, seeking a new host. Children would point and say, "Mama Fire," when the faint golden flame appeared above the trees. Meanwhile, Amaka's documentary continued to spread across Africa. The comments poured in. Thousands of people confessing how they'd once fallen for fake prophets. Churches debated. Radios buzzed. The story had become bigger than Umuahia. Hey, before I continue, if you're still watching this and you love African stories like this one, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which country you're watching from. Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, or anywhere across the world. Your support keeps these stories alive.
Now, back to the story. The night after the final burial, the villagers gathered to pray for peace. But as they began to sing, the ground trembled once again. A faint, eerie laughter rolled across the wind. In the midst of prayer, a dark mist drifted from the forest edge, curling, whispering, shaping itself into a human outline. Inspector Chika grabbed his flashlight. "Who's there?" A cold voice replied, "The one you buried still breathes." The people screamed and scattered. Amaka, trembling, kept her camera steady. Through the lens, she saw what others couldn't. A tall figure in white, smiling faintly, his eyes glowing faint red. "Prophet Chibuzo," she gasped. The figure only said, "Truth freed me from flesh, not from hunger." Suddenly, the flame on Ezinne's grave flared bright, shooting upward like lightning. The shadow screamed and dissolved, but its echo lingered. That night, every electric bulb in Umuahia flickered at once, then went dark. Days later, Amaka began hearing whispers in her sleep. Soft, gentle, but urgent. "Finish my work," the voice said. "Tell them truth is light." When she visited Ezinne's grave, she found the soil strangely warm. In the ashes lay a small carved wooden cross engraved with the words, "To every generation that fears to speak." Amaka held it tightly, tears in her eyes. "I'll keep your story alive," she whispered. Her next video was titled, "The Woman Who Challenged the Prophet." It opened with her voice saying, "This story is not just about one woman, it's about all of us who stayed silent when lies wore white robes." The video broke records. Viewers from every corner of Africa commented, "Watching from Zambia, greetings from Kenya. This story touched my heart." Ezinne's message had become a movement. But one night, while editing her next documentary, Amaka froze. In the dark reflection of her computer screen, Prophet Chibuzo's shadow stood behind her, faint, smiling. "You made me famous. Now, help me rise again." Her heart pounded. "You're gone," she shouted. The lights flickered. Her camera turned on by itself. The shadow moved closer. "Tell them I've changed. They'll believe you." For a moment, Amaka almost did. His voice was persuasive, sorrowful, human. Then she remembered Ezinne's words, "Truth costs, but it frees." She pressed record and said calmly, "Evil doesn't die when you expose it. It dies when people stop worshipping it." The shadow hissed and vanished into smoke. Months later, a peaceful wind swept through Umuahia. The ruins had turned to grass. Children played freely where once miracles were sold. The flame over Ezinne's grave burned softer now, almost like a lamp guiding travelers home. Amaka stood before it once last time. "You won, Mama. Truth won." But as she turned to leave, she noticed her own shadow stretching strangely long behind her, almost moving on its own. She smiled sadly. No man buries his shadow forever, but as long as we remember, it can never rule us again. The screen fades to black. Then her voice echoes softly. If you believe truth still matters, like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Together, we'll keep the light burning.